One person here who has a record of using gold star families as political ploys, and that's Donald Trump.
Do you think that the nation is owed a further explanation of what exactly the circumstances were under which those 4 Green Berets were killed?
Certainly, I think what happened with those 4 Special Forces troops is a great example of the fact that Americans don't even know where our troops are around the world right now. If you talk to Americans just a month ago, most of them would probably not know that we have troops in Niger, that we have troops in Djibouti, that we have troops all around the world who every day sacrifice and protect and defend our nation on foreign soil. And yet we don't even know where these folks are. And to have the President of the United States use the deaths of these heroes for political gain is simply unacceptable.
All right, Senator Tammy Duckworth, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Tonight, why the White House is stonewalling House investigators on their own use of personal email and late developments in the Russia investigations. Those stories ahead.
You might take something for your heart, your joints, or your digestion. So why wouldn't you take something for the most important part of you, your brain? With an ingredient originally found in jellyfish, Prevagen is now the #1 selling brain health supplement in drugstores nationwide. Prevagen, the name to remember.
How do we say that this fall our guests can earn a free night when they book at choicehotels.com and stay with us just 2 times?
Fall time, bada book, bada boom.
Pumpkin spice cookie?
I'm good.
Book now at choicehotels.com.
I take pictures of sunrises, but with my back pain, I couldn't sleep and get up in time. Then I found Aleve PM.
Aleve PM is the only one to combine a safe sleep aid plus the 12-hour pain-relieving strength of Aleve.
I'm back.
Aleve PM for a better AM.
All right, looks like we've got chips, popcorn, pretzels. Plain, sourdough, spicy, sesame, chocolate-covered, peanut butter-filled.
Plain.
Great. So what are we gonna watch?
Show me fall TV.
Only Xfinity X1 brings you the best hand-selected picks this fall.
Close your eyes and imagine for a minute that we were 9 months into the Hillary Clinton presidency and the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Trey Gowdy, requested information on whether Clinton White House officials had used private personal email since the election. Now imagine in response the Clinton White House just stonewalled. What do you think we would be talking about today? Well, that's exactly what is happening in this White House right now. Following a Politico report that Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner, as well as other White House officials, had used personal email for official business, the House Oversight Committee requested the White House specify who exactly had ever done so. But the president's congressional liaison, Mark Short, responded with a terse 2-page non-answer, which reads in part, quote, "The White House and covered employees endeavor to comply with all relevant laws." I like that. Endeavor. They're trying to comply with the law. That prompted a Democratic member of the Oversight Committee to say the White House has completely blown off the committee. If the White House won't provide documents to permit basic oversight, the chairman should send subpoenas. An aide to Chairman Gowdy said lawmakers, quote, "are currently evaluating whether that has been compliance, partial compliance, or non-compliance by the White House." Meanwhile, in the investigation the White House cannot stonewall, the Russia investigation, Special Counsel Robert Mueller has now interviewed a cybersecurity expert who wrote an article entitled, and I quote, "The Time I Got Recruited to Collude with the Russians." That's next.
How do you chase what you love with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis? Do what I did. Ask your doctor about Humira. It's proven to help relieve pain and protect joints from further irreversible damage in many adults. Humira works by targeting and helping to block a specific source of inflammation that contributes to RA symptoms. Humira has been clinically studied for over 20 years.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB. Hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Ready for a new chapter? Talk to your rheumatologist about Humira. This is Humira at Work.
I'm pretty handy around the house, but now that I have kids, I don't want to spend a Saturday installing a toilet or fixing an air conditioner. Thankfully, there's Home Advisor. A Home Advisor helps me find the best home pros in my area to handle any kind of project. They have verified reviews of the pros, and they do background checks, so you know you can trust them with your home. You can compare prices, book appointments, and what my wife loves most is that Home Advisor is completely free to use.
Go to homeadvisor.com or download the free app.
Mom, can I keep these? Sure, honey. Pick your favorites.
Whoa!
Mom said I could.
Because life is sometimes messy, we've got you covered. WeatherTech, the ultimate protection for your vehicle. With laser-measured floor liners and cargo liners for a perfect fit. Order yours today at WeatherTech.com. WeatherTech, proudly made in America.
I got a mortgage offer from the bank today.
What? You never just get one offer. Go to LendingTree.com and shop multiple loan offers for free.
Free?
Yeah, could save thousands. You should probably buy me dinner.
No.
Go to LendingTree.com for a new home loan or refinance. Receive up to 5 free offers and choose the loan that's right for you. Our average customer could lower their monthly bills by over $300. Go to LendingTree.com.
Discover the magic of fire at Riches, the nation's largest selection of fireplace extraordinaire and low-pi fireplaces, inserts, and stoves. For a limited time, save up to 1/3 off. 0% financing. Riches, 5 Puget Sound locations.
Hello, humans. Official spokes owl for WGU here to talk about competency-based education.
Competency what?
Competency-based education. It's all about learning, not time in class. So the faster you master the material, the faster you finish. That saves both time and money.
Wait, so I don't have to waste time relearning stuff I already know? Knowledge makes me hungry.
Online, nonprofit, and surprisingly affordable. WGU Washington. It's a new kind of you.
Don't miss Rich's winter warm-up sale on Fireplace Extraordinaire and low-pi fireplaces, inserts, and stoves. The nation's largest selection, now up to 1/3 off. 0% financing. Take a low-pi factory tour. Rich's, 5 Puget Sound locations.
Now.
Special counsel Robert Mueller has now reportedly interviewed a figure who may be key on unraveling the collusion side of the Russia investigation, if that is what bears out. And it has to do with a very strange story that was first reported in the Wall Street Journal. You may remember this. It was about a GOP operative named Peter Smith who sought Clinton emails, presumably the ones that she had deleted, from hackers before the election. He also sought help from a cybersecurity expert named Matt Tate, who was so alarmed by the scheme, he came out with his side of the story after it was all over, provocatively entitled, "The Time I Got Recruited to Collude with the Russians." Tate wrote that Smith, quote, never expressed to me any discomfort with the possibility the emails he was seeking were potentially from a Russian front, a likelihood he was happy to acknowledge. If they were genuine, they would hurt Clinton's chances and therefore help Trump. Now Tate has talked to Mueller, according to Business Insider, the first confirmation that Mueller is following this particular and peculiar thread of the story. Meanwhile, there's news in the obstruction of justice side of the Russia investigation today as well. Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer met with Mueller's team for much of today, according to Politico, and was grilled about the firing of James Comey. MSNBC intelligence analyst Naveed Jamali, former FBI double agent, and Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor, join me now. Renato, I have always been intrigued by this story, the Smith story. It's strange for many reasons. After Smith basically talked to a reporter, he committed suicide just a few weeks later. And it was an effort, a very clear effort to try to get those deleted emails from Russian hackers. There's a question about how related it is to the campaign. What is the significance of Tate being interviewed by Mueller?
Well, it tells us a couple things. First of all, it tells us that Mueller is interested in this whole line of inquiry. So Mueller is not interviewing Tate because he has something to say about obstruction of justice regarding the Comey firing or what happened in Trump Tower. Tate specifically knows about this specific set of facts. And, you know, if you read that story, one piece of it I thought was very interesting, Chris, is where he talks about this nonprofit that was set up with the names of many bigwigs in the Trump camp, including Kellyanne Conway and Manafort and others, that was set up to sort of disguise the campaign's involvement with this information. I suspect that Mueller is interested in finding out what Tate knew about that, what Smith told Tate before he mysteriously passed away, and you know, I would expect that Mueller is going to be following up when he questions some of those other individuals.
Naveed, what's going on here is this, you know, I think one of the things we've sort of gotten to in the investigation is the idea of cutouts. So if anyone was doing anything sort of hand in glove, it was being done through sort of plausibly deniable quasi-third parties. Is that your understanding of where we are in the investigation now?
I think that's exactly right. And whether it was the folks who met with Don Jr. or Guccifer who spoke to Roger Stone, allegedly, or perhaps some of these people that were speaking to Peter Smith offering what I would call a dangle, opposition research or information that's detrimental to Hillary Clinton, what you're seeing is exactly that, the sort of targeting, using cutouts, using people that if they are traced, if they are identified, are very difficult to trace exactly back to the Kremlin. Even though a layperson can look at this and say it's pretty likely that this was, a directed action. But that's the point, is whether this is illegal or not, what you are seeing here on the national security side is much more, not dotted lines, but much more solid lines dating, tracing back to the Kremlin.
There's another person that Mueller's team has talked to, Renato, and I want to ask you about him, Keith Kellogg, who served as the interim national security advisor after Michael Flynn was fired. He was, I believe, played a somewhat role as a deputy to Flynn himself. What do you make of that?
Well, certainly I think that Mueller is going to be interested in whatever Flynn told him, but also I think that we already know from other reports that Mueller is interested in Flynn's firing and the circumstances around it. Not because that was meant to obstruct Mueller's the FBI investigation in the way that the Comey firing was, but because I imagine that Mueller is interested in hearing what everyone had to say about what Flynn knew and what the downsides were of firing Flynn, because Flynn knew where the bodies were buried potentially, and his knowledge and what he has to say could potentially be useful given that Mueller appears to be going after Flynn.
I haven't, Naveed, gotten a time to talk to you until since NBC News broke the story about Paul Manafort, who of course was the campaign chair, and a Russian oligarch by the name of Oleg Deripaska, who we knew Manafort had been in business with. In fact, he'd been sued by Deripaska. We knew he sent an email to Deripaska when he got the job, or to his subordinate about Deripaska, basically saying, has Oleg seen this and can we be made whole? But NBC uncovered $30 million more that changed hands between these two men. As someone who worked in counterintelligence, what crosses your mind when you see that?
Motive. I mean, I don't know any other way. It's a more simple way to put it, but it really is true. In counterintelligence, there's 4 pillars of motivation that are the cornerstone of spies. And it's an acronym known as MICE: money, ideology, coercion, ego. And money always plays a role when it comes to these things. It's the easiest way to get people to do what you want them to do. And look, unfortunately for a lot of these players, there's a trail when you start dealing with money at that level.
As a prosecutor, Renato, that story on Oleg Deripaska, that NBC News reporting of Manafort, what did you make of it?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually can verify that a prosecutor would look at it in a similar way in terms of motive. Certainly, it provides a motive for Manafort to be offering those private briefings that we heard about that Manafort allegedly offered that same oligarch in an email. Why would the chair of a presidential campaign in the United States give special access to a Russian oligarch? Well, we now have 30 million additional reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, the way I sort of think of where we are right now, you've got all these, we've revealed these moments of the two sides, if you think of them, right? The Trump campaign and Russians or Russian-affiliated agents or actors or those aligned with the Kremlin sort of feeling each other out in all kinds of ways. Emails, approaches, dangles. And there's this question of is that where it got? And it just sort of stopped there and everyone just thought to themselves, well, I kind of see what you're doing, you kind of see what I'm doing, or whether we got further, right? Is that sort of where we're at, Naveed?
I think that's right. And I think, Chris, there's a lot of actors that we know about, but there very well may be some that we don't. Peter Smith, for example, is a perfect example of that. And, look, it's very clear the Russians were up to their eyeballs and trying to do something here. They did it with Facebook, they did it with Twitter, they did it in this wide scot. That doesn't mean that they didn't target individuals for recruitment. That doesn't mean that they hadn't targeted people well before the election that we're now starting to see kind of pop their heads up.
All right, NaveedJamali and Renato Mariotti, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still to come, what Senator John McCain said that earned him rousing applause and the warning President Trump issued in response. Plus, many people are saying Thing 1, Thing 2 is next.
Tomorrow's headlines before they go to print.
I've just been handed some great reporting.
Tomorrow's questions before anyone's asked them.
Could you make an obstruction case?
I think I could.
Tomorrow's conversation tonight.
Who is there to stand up to the boss and speak truth to power?